G'day, thanks for joining us. My name's Dan. I'm Chief Marketing Officer here at Tender, and with me we've got Amanda Lutvey. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We're here today because we've got a great conference coming up in July at the Hilton in Brisbane, and it's the Workforce Success Conference, where we'll have a range of speakers talking about a whole bunch of topics, everything from technology through to management and culture, which is obviously why you're here.
Yeah.
And Amanda is one of our speakers, and I'm really excited to be able to pick your brain about a few things. Amanda, you've worked in like a whole bunch of different roles and industries. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself to begin with?
Yeah, sure. So look, I have a pretty diverse background. So I started my career in the hotel industry, and very much moved through a number of roles there, but started in kind of the business development space. Did a little bit of the sales and marketing, and then moved into human resources, which is where I really found my passion. And I suppose my passion was really around the guest service point of view, and I utilised that kind of experience to then jump across to a number of different industries. So I've been fortunate to work in not-for-profit and health and in retail. So I've worked across a number of different industries in a number of different roles. So
and obviously now you're looking after the Career Culture Lab.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So look, I founded Career Culture Lab a couple of years ago, and really it was about, I'm passionate about developing extraordinary places to work, because we spend a lot of time at work, and reality is there's a gap there in a number of organisations where the managers and leaders just really don't know how to even start tackling cultural issues, or how to design a culture that they've envisaged. So that's where Career Culture Lab come in. We partner with organisations to help them with that, what I call workplace culture design. And then they're also dovetailing off that, I do a little bit of HR consulting with that, and then there's also the leadership and team development.
Right, so there's a whole gamut.
There's a whole gamut of stuff that comes under culture, so yeah.
And a lot of that obviously would have been picked up, and a lot of your experience from all those different organisations that you've worked with previously, different areas. That's cool.
And I think it's interesting, isn't it, when you work across different organisations, you work out what works for you and what's working for them, and you from every experience you pick up little nuggets of gold along the way that you can bring to life and work with others on. But I'm very much about tailoring solutions to the vision of the organisation. I don't think there is one size fits all for anyone. It is something that you need to really tailor in line with what you're trying to create.
No, is there a disconnect between an old school idea of what culture is versus now, or is it just us crazy millennials and Gen Z coming up with some bullshit?
Really good question. It's actually interesting, and I talk a lot about what workplace culture is, because what I find is, it's a little murky as to exactly what the definition is, and depending on who you're talking to. And I think, if you think about the Googles and Facebooks and the Atlassians of the world, well, you can kind of look at culture, and a lot of people think it's just about having a ping pong table or bean bags in the office or having a groovy work environment.
We've got two of those.
You do, and that's awesome. And I think, look, certainly what people are missing is that the Googles, the Atlassians, the Tanders of the world, you have a awesome workplace culture that may have ping pong tables and bean bags and open plan offices and all of that cool stuff. It's a great environment, but you're also focused on walking the talk when it comes to what is our vision, why are we here, and what are our values. So you've got really clear expectations when it comes to how people interact in the workplace. And so you're recruiting for cultural fit. You're very focused on ensuring that there's mutual accountability, that you're creating a great environment for people to work in, but people have to fulfill a certain role while they're here, and everyone is very focused on that. So it's not, I suppose my point is, it's not just about the benefits and the perks. It is about creating an environment where people want to contribute, where they understand how they can contribute to the greater good of the organisation.
That's a good point you raised, and we actually, beforehand, we were talking about this disconnect sometimes when you can put up values on the wall, which we do here at Tender, and actually embodying them and enacting them, or actually getting people to understand them. What ways can companies, how can managers and leaders in a business actually convey that to their staff so that they can actually embody it?
Yeah, look, I think it's about, And look, you know, I'm Gen X, so I'm kind of getting to the older end of the 4 generations we've kind of got in the workforce at the moment. But you know, if you're a baby boomer or a Gen Xer, it is about kind of getting back to why are we in business. So what is our vision, and what are our expectations? Because a lot of the times what I'm seeing is organisations will have these beautiful values on the wall, but they don't actually own them or live them. And the reality is the values are something that should evolve, because look, I suppose definition of workplace culture for me, your culture is something that ebbs and flows, because your culture is the sum of the attitudes, the beliefs and the behaviours of each and every one of your team members.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you've got a bad egg in the team and you're accepting certain behaviour, there's unwritten ground rules going on around that. If you've got innovation as a as a value on the wall, but when someone suggests a new idea, it gets kaputted and no one looks at it. The unwritten ground rule is, well, I'm not going to suggest an idea because that doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah,
so
gotcha.
it's about living, you know, embodying it, living it every day, and that's got to come from the top down. People have got to feel it. They've got to be real. These values have got to be something that we can all buy into and understand, and that we can clearly articulate for our people.
So we talk about, I'm thinking trickle down values, almost like trickle down economics, but trickle down values coming from the top. Is there a two-way sync there? Is there often, would you encourage the ability for the staff to influence management?
Oh, 100%. And I think one of the big things, one of the big, I suppose, interactive kind of workshops that I do with a lot of the employers I work with is this one where we bring the values to life. So it's about, and depending on the size of the organisation, sometimes that it'll be brought to life differently in each team. So we may have these words, but what do they mean for our team? What will we do? What won't we do in relation to those values? What's the accepted standard of behaviour for our team? And it could come down to really little things like, you know, we have an environment where we all greet each other in the morning. It's not okay to walk in and kind of walk to your desk and do work.
I've been in those businesses as well. Sometimes I'll wave my hand and someone will just walk past, you know, in those old businesses. It wasn't good.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that bringing to life for everybody so that they have ownership, buy-in on what these values mean, and that they truly get it, is really important. And that's, you know, and then, you know, then it comes down to the whole employee life cycle, the recruitment, the onboarding, the way we treat people on the way out the door. It's all really important that your culture, your values, the way we do things around here is consistent and consistently monitored and measured. And it's not something we do. You don't rest on your laurels with it. It doesn't go on the wall and we forget about it.
And that starts, you were saying, does it start from the maybe even interview stage? Does it start?
100%. Yeah. So it is about recruiting for cultural fit. Like obviously, you may be looking for a skill set. You may be looking for a certain attitude. I'm actually talking to a lot of students at the moment. I did a school group the other day, and I'm about to go to the University of Queensland this afternoon to do a guest lecture to talk about what do employers want. Yeah. And you know, and often I would rather, I know in most organisations I've worked in, we'd rather hire on attitude and cultural fit. You can teach skills.
Yeah, right.
You know, so it depends on the role and the seniority, obviously. Yeah. But generally speaking, you come in with a good attitude, a willingness to learn, and we can teach you the other stuff. And the cultural fit is so important. So
Amanda, we were talking about the interview process and how that differs depending on the role and what you need to do. Now, I am a big proponent of a, faster interview process. You know, one of our values here is urgency, getting things done. But I know that you were saying it depends sort of on the role. Is there an example where you can say why you might need maybe different stages or?
Yeah, for sure. Look, and it does depend on the role. I think you can miss out on top talent though if you make it too convoluted and too many hoops to jump through. Yeah. So you know, at frontline roles, for example, I was just part of the opening team for the Emporium Hotel South Bank. We needed to employ 180 staff in a reasonably short amount of time, and for some of those frontline positions, it very much did require a group interview process, and a lot of people kind of balk at that group interview, but look, the reality was we simply couldn't get through the number of applications without doing it that way. So to give you an example, they opened their new beautiful piano bar last Friday. They had over 1,000 applications for what was a handful of roles. Right. So, you know, and you've got to filter through that, and you don't want to miss out on people who, and not all of those roles need experience. So we're looking at a group of people, and you want to be able to look at things like, willingness to learn and their attitude and cultural fit and all of those things in that process. And a group interview is a way you can do that in a quicker way than interviewing 1,000 people.
Yeah, fair enough.
So yeah.
No, I can understand that. I guess as I said to you earlier, I'm not a big fan of the group stages and sort of tried to avoid them, and always said like, thank you very much, I'll move on. But we also talk about like the fact that there are some times where it can seem a bit, not greedy, but seem a bit odd when a business is trying to get you to elicit too much information or solve an issue for them.
Yeah.
Do you find that, or have you, heard any stories about
Yeah, look, I was talking to a lady the other day, and she's in a marketing, a senior marketing role, and she was kind of saying, as part of an interview process recently, she was asked to put together a whole marketing strategy for this organisation and present it to them, at second stage interview, and I kind of went, I think that's a little bit sneaky.
Bit cheeky,
bit cheeky is the word. Look, the reality is, I certainly was talking to her about potentially the approach is talking to them about what you would do, how you would approach it, rather than actually giving away all your IP, but utilising, I suppose, past examples of marketing strategies you've developed to actually indicate the level of your work, rather than telling them how to solve all of their issues as part of the interview process.
Showing how the mind works and how you'd approach it.
100%. And then, do I have the capability to take on this role? That's what they should be. That's the objective.
Leave them wanting more.
Yeah, exactly.
So once someone we've talked a bit about the interview process. Once someone gets into a business, how do you say? So how could a business then? What are some top tips that they could implement in a business to set the culture, set the tone, the standard? What are your top tips?
Top tips, it's about making sure that onboarding process, and onboarding is, the first 6 months of someone's employment in my eyes.
Wow.
So it's about making sure that from the minute they walk in the door, that they're welcome, that they feel like part of the team, that they have someone, there's always those moments when you first start in a new role in a new organisation where you think, oh God, is this a stupid question?
Yeah.
So do they have someone a buddy that they can go to and say, hey, how do we do this around here? What does that look like? So it's making it easy for people. It's making them feel like you want them there, that they fit, and giving them every opportunity to be set up for success. So I suppose tips. It's mapping out the new employee plan. It's mapping out their first couple of months in the role, and then allowing them to have all the touch points they need with the individuals, with the customers, with your product, with your whatever it is you're doing, so that they can really understand who you are as a business, and so that they can also see if they're a fit.
And whose responsibility is that? Does it fall on HR? Does it fall on the team leader for that area?
Look, I think HR have a role to play in that, but it can't just solely be a HR role. Look, the reality is the HR, the People and Culture Department, should certainly be a support function to the business, so to the team leader, to the team manager, to make sure that happens for their people.
Sweet. You were talking earlier as well about some projects that you'd been working on. Can you give me an example of how yourself and the business have come in and identified an issue and transformed it, or help people understand that there is an issue?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, a lot of the times when I'm working with clients, and it's a funny thing that I always talk about the fact that you have a culture whether you focus on it or not.
Yeah.
And the reality is,
it can be a bad or a good culture.
It can be it can be, I say, culture by default or culture by design. So your culture by default is when you just let things happen. There are no clear expectations. God knows what the vision is. Where are we headed? No one's really sure. So when you haven't clearly articulated those things, people are going to find their own way. And often what you find in an environment like that is there's all these unwritten ground rules, and there's all these, there's these mutterings below the surface that are going on. And often I get brought in when things blow up in the environment. So it's like we've got cultural issues and it's playing out like this. And it's usually a bit of a crisis point. So be it bullying claim or there's big communication issues, and that's when they realise there's a broader issue here. So generally, starting point in those situations is to go in and really do an audit and find out what's really going on. And often bringing in an external person to do that is quite effective because people are often more open if they think that, hey, we're looking for the gaps here. What are the gaps? What's happening? What's really going on? And then we can actually look at what we can do to fix things. I also love working in the startup space, because that's where you have the opportunity to really, design a culture that you really want.
Do you find that startups in general, obviously I know there's a big thing about, we're talking about ping pong tables and bean bags, and it's sort of like, what can we do to define ourselves differently to every other startup out there?
Yeah.
Are they more open-minded when it comes to?
Yeah, 100%. I think the startup phase in any business is so exciting, because the reality is you're really in touch with the vision.
Yeah, right.
Otherwise, what are you doing there? You know, so and that's often what businesses that have got a few years under their belt have lost touch with. Like, what the hell are we here for?
Yeah.
What are we actually here for? And when we go back to and reconnect with that vision, and the vision may change. Like, we've got to be willing to pivot. The market changes. There's change happening all the time for us, so we need to have that behavioural flexibility to pivot with those changes. But then it's about transparency and communicating that to the team, and ensuring, in a context-specific manner, that we're being pretty candid with the conversations we're having. Yeah. So I think I often go in and start with an audit, which is really, it's an employee engagement survey kind of on steroids, because it's actually talking to individuals,
right,
as well as getting them to potentially do something online. And then you're really looking at all the processes, what's the framework that we have in place when it comes to our people and setting them up for success, and what's missing.
So you're speaking about implementing platforms and tools into a business to encourage that culture. When we talk about that, are we talking about just technology to make people successful? Is that all there is?
Well, I think we can't lose sight of the fact that our team and our workplaces are made up of human beings. And the reality is, we need to be looking at what are the human beings that we employ, what are their talents, what are their strengths, and why have we got them working here. Technology plays a massive role in freeing our people up often to do what they're actually employed to do, to be able to focus on what's really important. And what I find, I was part of the opening team at the Emporium Hotel at South Bank, and we've got all these really talented young people in management roles, and their time, rather than being spent frontline with guests, which is where their talent is, and training and coaching their the frontline staff, what they're actually getting caught up in is all this admin stuff.
Right.
So, approving timesheets, doing rosters, all this stuff that can be so simple if you implement, technology. Yeah. So, I think it's about us just recognising the role of technology, but never losing sight that it is about human beings and connecting them as well.
Well, nice little cheeky plug for Tanda in there, which we obviously really appreciate. So, speaking of Tanda, we talk about ways that people can communicate with each other and engage. Now, we've created a few features recently. Specifically, one of the newest ones to ship has been chat, so the ability for people to speak within their teams or to manage this directly. Yeah. Have you seen the rise of chat platforms like Slack? If we can be as big as Slack, I think that'd be great. But have you seen that there's been a rise in general of people using it?
Yeah, look, I think absolutely, and I think as you have, it depends on the generational mix of your workplace. Yeah. We do have workplaces in a lot of cases these days with 4 generations, and obviously the millennials coming through, the Gen X's, the Gen Y's are the ones who are very much engaged with the technology in that space, and utilising it really, really well. Yeah. They're teaching us Gen X's and the older ones in the workplace how to do that, and I think that's amazing, because when little things like utilising workplace on Facebook and things like that to get key messages out, it's vitally important. But actually seeing how that can work and educating potentially the managers who may not be engaged with that technology on a day-to-day basis is extremely important to make that happen. But I think it depends on the generational mix. If you've got a largely millennial workforce, you need to be doing this stuff. Otherwise, you're just not going to retain that talent. Yeah,
right. I think using the platform a messaging platform is amazing, and the ability to have that direct conversation is good. I think you still need that personal touch and need to ensure that people are speaking face to face. But I think for a record of conversations and a record of you know, what people need, it's actually pretty good to have that on paper. I guess the immediacy as well is pretty handy, particularly if someone's not in, you can't speak to them face to face.
Yeah. Look, and as you rightly pointed out, it can't replace the conversation that we need to have. It shouldn't ever replace the, I need to give you some feedback, or can I ask for feedback from you? But it's certainly in terms of making things easy, just communicating day-to-day logistical stuff, perfect.
Yeah. Fair enough. Would you have any, I guess, maybe some closing points around the top notes? Like, I know we've talked about a few things today, but the top notes for encouraging better culture by design, as you call it.
Culture by design.
I've got that stuck in my head now. What are the top notes for encouraging and setting a culture by design?
Look, the top notes are to get really, really clear on your why. You know, what's the organisation's why? What's our vision? What's our mission? What are we here for? And then really engaging the team in building values. So values being the behaviours that we want to see on a regular basis. And then making sure not only is there all of that clearly articulated, that we are all walking the talk. That from the top down, everyone understands what it means to be part of this team, and that we don't accept behaviour that's not in line with the values. And when I say we don't accept, we pick it up and we talk about it. We have human-to-human conversations. We were talking before about that fantastic book, Radical Candor, and it is about treating people like human beings first, but also being willing to talk straight and just talk to them about what are the issues, what's going on.
What do you think in context?
Feedback. Yeah, giving feedback. That no longer do we do, the dreaded annual performance review was kind of, years ago, that was the only time you got feedback from your boss.
Yeah.
Feedback needs to be daily, if not several times daily.
Yeah.
Let me know how I'm going, coach me, mentor me. That's what we're asking for these days.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think we'll definitely be talking about it more so at the Workforce Success Conference this year as well. Again, we love Radical Candor here at Tanda, and I think a lot of that rhymes, that's pretty good. But also, I know a lot of the people we work with, and particularly yourself also, really take on that ideology. And I think once you know how to cut the bullshit the right way, as I would say,
100%.
put it in context, things flow a lot better and people understand you a lot better. One of our values is communicate and articulate, and I think that a lot of that comes back from a radical candor. On that note, I'm excited to see you at the conference, and for those who are watching, we'll be hosting the Workforce Success Conference, as we mentioned at the top of this webinar, at the Hilton in Brisbane. It's going to be an exciting time. Join 600 other people from frontline through to leadership and corporate. It's going to be, I guess, a really good day. It's a Friday. It's going to be a really good day of just people coming together to share ideas. Yourself, you're speaking there. Obviously, I'm
really excited.
Yeah, and we're excited to hear some more from you. We're going to have people speaking on everything from technology to culture to management practices through to industry issues based on all the different sub-industries around Australia that we focus on here at Tanda. So I think it's going to be a good time. Actually, I know it's going to be a good time. It was a good time last year. It's going to be even bigger this time. So there should be all the information on screen at the moment, hopefully. But if you head to workforcesuccess.com, grab a ticket now. They are on an early bird special, which will be fantastic. And it means you'll be able to grab an amazing day as well as a pre-event the night before for an absolute steal of a price. Hope to see you all there and can't wait to see you.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.